Well, hello guys, it is Drew here, just saying hello. I'll peek into the camera right quick. Hello, hello. Anyway, I wanted to make a video since we're talking about communication about how I actually practice with my daughter. And there are a couple different ways that I speak with her, as I've talked in this series before, or just on videos in general. So one of them is where I'm communicating in the same way that I'm communicating right now, where I'm just speaking so she can get the tone of the English language and the way I speak and, you know, the kind of blah, 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 the sense of it more like a song and listening to the way I speak, because English sounds different from Japanese or Chinese or Spanish, so she's learning that. But the other thing I do is giving her very explicit instruction about this thing and that thing, and I'll do something like take a deck of cards or use some blocks or something, and then we do what I actually call fluency training, and I'm drilling her in a way that's giving her examples of how the language works and teaching her how the grammar works as well. So I wanted to do something that's similar to that, but in a way that's maybe a little bit more complicated, so I wanted to teach a bunch of phrasal verbs. So right here I have a lovely Hello Kitty bag that I've taken. This is just in my house, and I've got a stack of Uno cards in here. So if I'm just speaking with her, I would do something, and again, I'm making it a bit more complicated for this lesson just because your English level is higher than my daughter's is, and she's about 1 year and 3 months at this point. But when I'm speaking with her, if I just want to talk about phrasal verbs, what I'm going to do, and I would not necessarily be able to explain to her exactly how I do it, so I have to be a bit more careful. But in this, I'm going to use phrasal verbs, and I'll use them in different ways so you can see how maybe they're used in a question, or they're used in a situation where I'm at, like, you know, you could split the phrasal verb up. So again, we have a word like split up. So I split the phrasal verb up, or, you know, and again, you'll just see the examples of these. But I'm just using phrasal verbs in different ways, but in a physical sense, and showing you exactly how they work, because this is how native English speakers learn the language. I'm just making it a bit more explicit and doing it maybe more than parents normally would do if they don't have maybe just a way of teaching in a particular way like I do. So the first thing I'll do is I will take out the cards. Now this is one of our first phrasal verbs, so I'm going to take out the cards. I'm taking the cards out of the deck, or I'm taking the cards out of the bag. Am I taking the cards out? So yes, I am. I'm taking the cards out of the bag. So I'm going to put away the bag, or I'll put the bag away. I'll take the bag and just put it over here, so I'll put it away. And now I have a stack of Uno cards. So we can look at these. Whoa, it's the same thing on both sides. So this is a stack of some older Uno cards. But first, just looking at the cards, I'm going to take off the first card. So take off the first card. So I can take a card, but I can also take off a card. And this is just the same way I have a stack of something, so I can take something off. Like I would take a card off of the stack, or I take a card off of the table. So here is the lens cap for my camera. I can take the cap off the table. Am I taking the cap off the table? Yes, I am. I'm taking the cap off the table, taking it off the table. So I will put it down. Again, this is another phrasal verb, so I can put the card on the table, or I can put the card down. So put it on the table or put the card down. So when I'm practicing with my daughter, and this is a bit more difficult because this requires her to do things as well, but showing, like if you have a deck of cards right now, I can put a card down. Put one card down, put two cards down, put two cards down. So I'm putting them down. Pick them up, put them down. And when you're practicing with something like this, you can do the exact same thing, whether you're trying to improve for yourself or you're trying to help someone else. So I can pick up a card, or I can put a card down. Now, if I move these over, again, I'm trying to move something, but when I'm moving something in a casual conversational way, I can move over. So I would just move over the deck of cards, or I move the deck of cards over. And again, I'm showing you how you can split these phrasal verbs up. Some of them are separable, which just means you can separate them, like split up, or to split something up, or you can't separate them in some cases. And these are things that you just learn by practice, by listening to them and reviewing them over and over again. So now I have some cards on the table, and what am I doing here? Now right now I'm taking something and I'm doing what? what is this action? What is this action right here? So if you think about, well, I'm turning a card. Now the turning, like the rotation is like this. I'm turning something like this. So even though it's facing in one direction like this, I'm turning over. I'm turning the card over. Now you can also say to flip the card over. Flip the card over. Now when we think about taking a phrasal verb like this is the way native speakers communicate normally, and we take a verb like turn or flip or toss or grab, and then we're using kind of different levels of the language depending on how we're actually moving. So right now, if I'm moving very slowly and deliberately, like I would actually turn something, I'm turning it over. But maybe if I want to do something faster, I would flip the card over. So I can pick the card up and turn the card over, or I can pick the card up and flip the card over. Flip the card over. Flip the card over. Am I flipping the card over? Yes, I am. So I'm flipping the card over or turning the card over. So I can flip the card over, I can toss the card over, you know, anything like that. And you can create your own phrasal verbs in this way, learning to think in the same way that a phrasal verb would be used, or the same way that a native speaker would use phrasal verbs in an everyday situation. So now I have a kind of group of cards, and now I'm going to align them. I'm going to stack them, or in a more conversational way, you would say you stack them up. So I'm going to stack up the cards, stack up the cards like this. So if I have different piles of cards, excuse me, I'm going to stack them up like this. So you can stack the cards, but a more conversational way of saying this is to stack something up. Stack something up. Now, up isn't necessary, but this is just a way that native speakers communicate. And again, when you're saying something like clean up or eat up, these are just ways of adding something to make it sound more conversational and native. So I'm going to stack up the cards, or I'm going to put the cards down like this. I'm going to put the cards down in different piles. So I can stack up, or I can pile up. Pile up. So if I have a pile of cards, now this is more of a stack because it's a little bit cleaner, but if it's a little bit more messy like this, maybe I have a pile of cards on the table. So I have a pile of cards, or a stack of cards, if I'm a bit neater with it, a stack of cards. Now, it doesn't matter if you're using something where you're saying, well, is this a pile of cards or a stack of cards? You don't have to think so much about, okay, what is the correct phrasal verb, because most times people will understand what you're saying. The important thing is just to understand more that the way we're talking about a card or any other thing in a particular sense. So I'm just using cards like this for an example, but I'm turning a card over, or I'm flipping a card over, or in this case, I'm turning a card around. I'm turning a card around. So in this case, it's one of those things like if you think about, you know, something like a cap, we're seeing the same side of it and we're rotating the object like this. So I'm turning it around, or I'm turning it around. Now, if I want to do something faster, I might spin it around, as in the case of the card. Again, we have the same idea of taking one thing, we're talking about around, so we're focusing on the adjective here, moving something around, or the way of expressing something, and then we're changing the verb that goes along with that phrasal verb. So to go along with, this is another phrasal verb that just means to be connected. So I have one card, and this card goes along with that card. This card goes along with this card. This card goes along with these two cards. So if I have a card and I'm turning it around, you can see the same side of it. I turn the card around. I'm turning the card around. Am I turning the card around? Yes, I am. I'm turning the card around. Or I can turn the card over. So again, I'm turning over, or I'm turning over, or I'm turning over this way. It doesn't really matter, but you're showing the opposite side of something, so the over becomes, okay, I'm showing the opposite side of a deck of cards. So I'm showing, or the opposite side of a card in this case. So I'm turning over the card, and I'm turning the card around. Turn around, turn around. So this is the same way. If this is your head and you're standing like this and turning like this, you're turning around. But if you're lying on your back or your stomach, let's say I go get a massage and the person says, can you please turn over? They're not asking me to turn around. They're asking me to turn over. Or someone could say, could you please flip over and I'm moving a little bit faster like that. So all of these things, when you're trying to learn more complicated verbs, it doesn't matter like what is it to rotate or to you want to, be on the opposite side. You can express things in a more complicated way, or you can do the simple thing that native speakers do, especially children, and what they're doing is combining a small group of kind of similar words or more simple words, and then saying them in a more simple way. So I'm taking turn and over or up or something like that. So I can turn over a card or turn around a card like this. And it's much easier than saying rotate or to revolve or other words that are more complicated like this. So this is what it means to be learning something like a child would. And in this case, again, I'm just doing things where I'm manipulating a card and I'm thinking about what's really happening here. Not what is the correct verb, but what am I really doing? Am I taking a card? Am I like bending the card? Am I bending over? Something like that. Am I bending over the card? Or am I turning over the card? Or am I turning the card around? And I don't want to give too many examples in this. I just thought it would be an interesting way for you to see how I'm working with Aria, as well as for your own self when you're thinking about learning different languages. Pick up a deck of cards like this and you can do the exact same thing. Think about how you would manipulate a card in a particular way. Would I take off a card? I can take a card or I can take off a card because you're removing something from a stack of something else. I'm taking one card off of something else, just like I take a card off of the table. Now, if I want to maybe move the card in a different way, I can pick up the card. It's a little bit difficult on this table, but I can pick up the card or I can slide the card. There are lots of different ways I can move it, and then we just combine those with other words that help us express it in maybe a more detailed way, but it's not using more complicated language. And again, like the way like this is a word rotate, but I'm turning something around, turning it around. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this. Just again, it's a very simple way of thinking about communication and how you can learn, as well as for practicing, as well as for helping other people learn. If you take just a stack of Uno cards or any other object like this, this is the case for the microphone that I use for the camera. So I can open something. I can open up the case. Again, when I add up to that, it doesn't really change anything about what I'm saying, but it just makes it sound a bit more kind of relaxed and casual and conversational. So open up the case or close the case, or I can turn it around or turn it over, or maybe turn it up like this. So I want to have it kind of up on one side. So in the same way that it doesn't matter if I'm really being correct about what I'm saying. It's more, can you tell someone to do something and then would they be able to produce that action? So are you communicating the correct meaning, even if it's not using maybe a phrasal verb that most people would know? Anyway, that's it for this video. If you have, do click that, we'll give that kind of a like button here. Click that like button, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye. To continue learning, click on the link in this video to download Speak English Naturally, our free guide to speaking and sounding like a native English speaker. The guide reveals the 3 most important kinds of conversational English you must learn if you want to sound native, and will help you experience instant improvement in your fluency and speaking confidence. To download your free guide on a mobile device, click on the link in the upper right of this video. To download your free guide from a computer, click on the link in the lower right of this video. I look forward to seeing you in the guide.